Sarah Miles, a friend and colleague, sat at a right angle to his right. He took a drag from his cigarette, crushed it in the ashtray on the table in front of him, took a sip of coffee, and lit another cigarette. "Are you okay, Tom?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "Not really, Sarah," he said, "but I'm glad you're here." "That's what friends are for, Tom," she said. He nodded his head and remembered his marriage nearly 22 years ago. He completed his 4-year career in the Marine Corps, serving as a military policeman and member of parliament. All he ever wanted to be was a police officer. To be more precise, he wanted to become a detective. After serving in the Corps, he returned to college as a full-time student, taking advantage of his veterans' benefits. His goal was to get a degree in criminal justice and become a police officer. There, he met Julia. She was finishing her business degree, and they were taking the same business law class. For her part, she immediately took a liking to the Marine combat veteran. With a height of just over 180 centimeters, he weighed 90 kilograms, solid muscles, broad in the shoulders and narrow in the hips. He looked imposing in any uniform he wore. They dated, fell in love, and got married. After graduating from high school, she was about 5 years younger than him and had already been engaged once. She never explained why they broke up, only that he graduated from high school a couple of years before her and moved to New York. He really didn't care about her previous boyfriends. Hell, he was something of a wildcat in the Corps, chasing women wherever and whenever he could. But when he met Julie, he knew he had met his soulmate and was determined to settle down with her. They got married immediately after graduating from school. He was able to get along with the police department, but it was 6 months before he could get into the police academy, so he was assigned to work as a 911 dispatcher. He knew it was temporary, but at least he was doing something and bringing home a salary. Julie went to work for an investment firm that had offices all over the country. Together, they earned enough to pay for a small but nice apartment, which suited them well. They spent most of their time in the bedroom anyway. She liked her job, but the only part of her job that Tom didn't like was the mandatory quarterly meetings back east, either in Washington, D.C. or New York. They usually consisted of seminars on the latest changes in legislation, but sometimes they included meetings with various officials. She said the trips usually lasted only 3 days, but could last as long as a week. He hated it when she was away from him, but she shocked him when she returned. She gave birth to their first child, Andrew, about 6 months after he graduated from the police academy, which was about 1.5 years after they married. 2 years later, she gave birth to their second child, Marie. She had a difficult time giving birth to Marie and convinced him to have a vasectomy. Both children inherited their mother's blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. His mother suggested that he test their DNA to make sure they were his, but he rejected her attempts, saying that Julie would never cheat on him. "If you say so," his mother said quietly. About 5.5 years after joining the police, Tom took the detective exam and passed with flying colors. He also passed the oral exam with ease, thanks to his continued study and time spent in the Corps. No one expected him to become a detective so early in his career, but he did, surprising everyone, including himself. The promotion couldn't have come at a better time, as they wanted to buy a house big enough for their family. They found a nice 2-story, 3-bedroom house in a decent area and bought it. By this time, Julie had earned a couple of promotions and was also bringing in more money. A couple of months after he became a detective, he accompanied Julie to her company's Christmas event, which was held in the ballroom of the local Marriott Hotel. Julia introduced him to Alf Henriksen, a middle manager who came to town from New York. "Oh yes, one of the best in the city," said Alf, shaking Tom's hand. "I heard you just became a detective. I'll definitely sleep better tonight knowing you're at work." "Thank you," Tom said, suppressing his irritation. Something about this guy haunted him. Like Julie, he had long blonde hair and the deepest blue eyes he had ever seen on a man. But there was something else about this guy that haunted him. However, he could not pinpoint exactly what was wrong. "Anyway, looks like the stronger one, huh?" he asked, in a tone that confused Tom. Alf grinned, noticing Tom's confusion. "You know, I was once engaged to Julie. This was before I graduated from high school and came to New York." "I see," said Tom. In any case, I'm glad we finally met, said Alf. I've heard so much about you. Is it true that you received one of those Silver Star medals in Iraq? Yes, it's true. Ah, a war hero, said Alf. Well, thank you for your service. I'm just doing my job, Tom said in a noncommittal tone. The real heroes are usually those who return home in coffins, said Alf. Of course, said Tom. Tom danced with his wife and watched her dance with Alf a couple of times. He saw the tall man whisper something to Julie, but other than that, he didn't notice any inappropriate touching between them. When they finished, he walked Julie back to their table and pointedly handed her back to him. It was nice to see you again, Julie, Alf said. And it gave me great pleasure to finally meet you, sir, he added with a slight bow to Tom. Me too, Tom said, noticing the slight grin on the man's face. As they drove home, Tom turned to Julie. Was this the guy you were engaged to in college before we met? He asked. Yes, it was him, she said quietly. Don't you think it would be a good idea to let me know that you're working with an old flame? He asked. He works in New York, and we don't see each other often, she said. He works in a completely different department than me. I'm sorry, I just didn't think it really mattered. It was so long ago. However, you're right, I probably should have told you about this. Forgive me. Of course, he said. So what happened between you two, if you don't mind me asking? Not at all, she said. I wanted to get married and have children. He wanted the benefits of marriage but not the responsibilities, you know, kids, mortgage, bills, all that stuff. When he left for New York, he made it clear that he would probably date other women. I decided it would be better to end the engagement. I see, said Tom. Do you have any regrets? She smiled, looked at him, and shook her head. Not at all, she said. I have everything a girl could dream of. She took his right hand in her left and brought it to her lips, kissing it. And right now, I would love it if you could take me to our bedroom and make mad passionate love to me. Your desire is my law, my love, he told her. He never met Alf again, and Julie never mentioned his name. So he put the meeting aside and never thought about it again. The quarterly meetings continued, and Tom never saw anything in her behavior or actions that indicated there was a problem. She was always loving and attentive, and their married life seemed quite prosperous. As time went on, Tom met several of Julie's friends from her office. They seemed friendly enough, but he had the feeling that they were hiding something. He became quite close to Alice, one of her colleagues. When she and her husband witnessed an armed robbery at a bank downtown, he caught the robber, and the couple testified in court. By this time, he had served in the police force for more than 17 years and had risen to the rank of police lieutenant. He would sometimes stop by Julie's office for lunch and would always try to see how Alice was doing since she and her husband had suffered some trauma from the robbery. Sometimes looking down the barrel of a loaded shotgun can have that effect on a person. However, he admired their courage when they bravely stood up and testified in court. When the prosecutor asked her if she could identify the man, she answered in the affirmative, then pointed directly at the accused and loudly proclaimed, "That's him over there." It was about 2.5 years ago. However, lately, he had noticed that Alice looked at him strangely when he passed by. It was the same look he had seen on several of Julia's co-workers at company events he attended with her. At the time, it seemed strange to him, but he did not attach any importance to it. But one day, he decided that he would find out what was bothering her. He entered the room where Julia and Alice were working and headed towards his wife's office. However, Alice intercepted him before he got there. Julie went out for a while, she told him. Tom asked, when will she return? She said she needed to deliver some paperwork to the legal department, so she might be gone for a while, Alice said. He saw the expression on her face and decided to insist on his own. Any problems, Alice? He asked. Is everything okay between you and your husband? Everything is fine with us, she said. But I'm just curious, did you know that Julie was dating Alf when we went east? No, that's not true, said Tom. Why did you ask? She said you guys have an open marriage, and you're okay with it because of your trauma, she said. Injury? Tom asked. She said you were injured on duty and couldn't have a night, she said. I'm sorry if I stuck my nose where it shouldn't, she added, seeing the look of shock on his face. You're right, I'm not injured, and I don't understand why she said something like that, Alice, Tom said. Do you have any evidence of this? I have some photos that I took on my cell phone the last time we were there, she said. If you want, I will send them to you by email. Sure, that would be nice, he said, writing his email address on the back of his business card. He handed it to her. Do you know how long this has been going on? I'm not sure, but I saw her with him every time we went, she said. How long? Tom asked, insisting on this question. It's been about 5 years since I've been here, she told him. Understand. Do me a favor, please, he said quietly. Don't tell her anything about me being here, okay? Mother's word, she said. I'll send them to you right now. Thank you, Alice, he said. And by the way, I've never been injured in the line of duty, and I can have a night just for fine. See you later. With these words, he left. His mind and heart were in turmoil. Did she cheat on him with Alf? Traders usually give some sign that they are involved in an illicit relationship, he thought, but he couldn't remember anything that didn't pass the husband test. Julia always seemed loving and attentive and never gave the slightest hint that anything was going on. Of course, he never checked her luggage or demanded that she describe her route in detail to him. She always called every evening when she was not at home, but it didn't really mean anything. He knew that Alice might have been exaggerating a bit, so he decided to wait until he saw the photos before taking any further action. He received them about 10 minutes after he left Julie's work. He almost lost what was in his stomach when he looked at the photographs. He saw Julie kissing Alf as they danced and saw his hand resting on her almost without nothing bottom under a short skirt that he had never seen her wear before. His eyes filled with tears when he saw the photo of the two of them entering the elevator. She smiled, looking at him with a look that he knew all too well, the look she always looked at him before they made love. When he returned to his office, he found it difficult to concentrate on his work. Looking at the situation board, he decided to call it a day and go home. Are you okay, Lieutenant? Asked one of the other detectives as he walked out. Heartburn, he said. I must have eaten something. I'm heading home for the rest of the day. Okay, said the detective. See you tomorrow. Yes, see you, Tom said, leaving the room. Returning home, he grabbed a beer and sat down at his computer. He opened his calendar to see when Julia's next trip back east was scheduled. He saw that it would happen just a couple of days later, on Friday. Judging by the colored strip that highlighted the days on the calendar, she would be gone for a whole week. He copied the photos from his phone to his computer and enhanced them. He zoomed in on Alf's face, and that's when the bottom fell out of his world. Now he understood why this man's face had awakened something in him all those years ago when they had met. He took out photographs of his two children and compared them with Alf's. Damn, he thought, and Andrew was a dead ringer for Alf, and Marie came in second. Fighting back tears, he knew he had to get proof of their origin. He found the number for a company he knew that provided fast and accurate DNA testing and called. After he asked them to put the first aid kit aside for him, he was about to leave when his cell phone rang. He knew from the beep that it was Julie. Hello, he said. Tom, are you okay? She asked worriedly. You speak as if you are out of sorts. Everything is fine. It's just that the case I'm working on is a little frustrating, he said. Besides, my stomach is a little sour. What's happening? Well, you know I have a week's trip back east, so I'll be working late with the managers here on the itinerary, she said. We'll probably go out for dinner and then have a couple of drinks, so I can't be back until after 11. Could you watch the children tonight? No problem, he said. This was nothing new. She always met with management before their quarterly meeting and knew she would probably get home well after 11:30. Thank you very much, she said. Make sure they go to bed by 9:30. They have tests tomorrow, and I want them to get a good night's sleep. Of course, he said. You are the best. See you later. Love you. Yes, he said. I love you too. They finished the conversation, and Tom realized that the hardest thing in all of this was pretending that there were no problems between him and Julie. If what he suspected was true, It would mean that she had been cheating on him their entire marriage. The only way he could get through this without going too far was to treat it the way he would treat any criminal case, with cold, hard detachment. Follow the clues and see where they lead. He took a DNA test and got home before the kids. He realized that he would have to wait until they were asleep before he could get anything from them. The last thing he wanted was for them to know what was going on. They weren't stupid and would have known what was going on if he had asked them for a cheek swab. He hated the ploy but decided it was necessary. He then looked at his contact list and found the name he was looking for. Roger Dunleavy is a former police detective who retired a couple of years ago. He moved to New York, his hometown, and founded his own private investigative service. His specialty was cheating spouses. He called, hoping to catch him there. Dunleavy and Associates, his friend said when he answered. "Roger, how are you, you old dog?" Tom asked. "Tom Williams, is this really you?" asked Roger. "Yes, it's me," said Tom. "How are things going lately?" "Well, there are more cheating spouses than you can imagine," Roger said, chuckling. "What's the matter? Finally realizing you'll never be captain and want to get in on the action? I could use a good man like you." "Nope," said Tom, "but perhaps I have a job for you if you want to take it. And of course, I will pay." "Don't tell me you think Julie is cheating on you," Roger said. "I'm almost sure of that," said Tom. "And if what I suspect is true, then this has been going on for a long time." *T, Roger said. "She'll be in town for a week starting on Friday," Tom said. "I'll email you her itinerary and a photo of her and the guy I suspect she's cheating on me with." "I understand. You want the full range of services?" Roger said. "Audio, video, photographs, written report?" "Yes, all that," said Tom. "Don't hide anything. I must know the whole truth." "So how much do you think this will cost me?" "Listen, Tom," said Roger, "you've saved my ass more than once. Just cover my expenses, buy me a beer, and we'll be done with this. I don't want to take advantage of you." Tom said, "Damn it, Roger," in his New York accent, making Tom laugh. "I owe you a lot." "Thank you, Roger." "You are a real friend," said Tom. Roger laughed. "Now you get it," Roger said. "Let me give you my secure email address." Tom wrote down the address and spelled it out to make sure he got it right. "Thank you, old friend," said Tom. "As soon as I have her itinerary, I will email it to you." "I'll dig," said Roger. "We'll talk soon." They ended the conversation just as the children returned home from school. "Is pizza okay for today, guys?" he asked, entering the living room. "Yes, of course," they said. "Mom left for one of her meetings again?" Andrew asked. "Yes," said Tom. "She's leaving on Friday and will be gone for a week." "A week then?" asked Marie. Tom couldn't help but notice the sarcasm in her voice. "Yes, a week," he said. "So you two need to be on your best behavior. You know I'm armed and handcuffed," he added jokingly, making them both laugh. He ordered pizza, and they ate in the living room while watching TV. "Guys, are you ready for tomorrow's tests?" he asked. "Yes, to a large extent," Marie said. Andrew said the same thing. "Well, maybe you guys should spend some time with your books before heading to the bunk," he said, using the nautical term for bed. "Mom lets us stay until 10 on test days," Andrew said. "Don't be a fool," said Tom. "Lights out exactly at 9 p.m. "Shouldn't it be at 9 p.m., Dad?" asked Marie. "You're absolutely right, dear daughter," Tom told her. "Now come on, go upstairs." They grabbed their books and headed upstairs. Tom watched them go to their rooms. They were good children, and he loved them very much. He just hoped he wouldn't find what he suspected. He returned to his office and took out a blank white notebook. If he was going to treat this like an investigation, he wanted to do it right. He placed the paper in it and began to take notes, starting with the information Alice had given him. He printed and attached the photos she sent him. He then placed the comparison photographs he had taken of the children's faces in the notebook and wrote underneath them paternity. He opened his calendar and quickly glanced at the dates. Meetings with Julia took place every 3 months like clockwork. After noting the children's birth dates, he did a countdown and realized that in both cases, her pregnancy apparently began around the time of these meetings. Were these coincidences? He asked himself, already knowing the answer. He thought about it and remembered the conversation they had on the way back from the party where he met Alf. What did she say? This was after she told him that she had no regrets. I have everything a girl could dream of, she told him. Certainly a lover, no doubt, with a lot of equipment and a clueless husband at home who takes care of her children while she goes off to have an intim in the big city. Damn her, he thought, damn her to hell. He looked at his watch and saw that it was 9:45 p.m. He closed the notebook and locked it in his desk drawer. He grabbed the DNA test kit and looked up, seeing that the lights were off in the children's bedrooms. He crept closer and looked inside. Of course, his two angels were fast asleep. He grabbed what he needed, and in the blink of an eye, had 2 fresh DNA samples. Without even moving them, he made sure they were covered and kissed their foreheads before leaving their rooms. He added his own DNA to the kit, filled out the paperwork, and put it all in his briefcase. He hated doing it, but decided it was what had to be done. Sitting in his deep chair, he thought about the current situation and what he would do when he learned the truth. If she cheated on him, divorce was inevitable, but that opened another can of worms, he thought. What about child custody, child support, alimony? He made a note to talk to a family law attorney. There were other problems too. Could she be charged with fraud or perjury if she knew Alf was the father but listed him on the birth certificate? If Alf turns out to be the father, could he be held liable for child support back? What have you done, Julie? He asked himself. He trudged to bed but found that he could hardly sleep. Julie returned from her meeting around 11:45 p.m. to find him still awake on the bed. Are you okay? She asked. Not really, he said. Do you want to talk about it? She asked. This is the case I'm working on, he told her. The guy comes home and discovers that his whole marriage was a lie, finds out that the children he supported for more than 10 years are not even his children. Oh my God, she said in shock. What's happened? Damn, he snapped. He killed her, Julie, with bare hands, then he killed the children, he eventually committed suicide. This poor man, she said. He looked at her before saying anything else. Yes, he said. I can't even imagine how he must have felt. It makes me feel kind of lucky that I don't have these problems. She smiled but did not say anything for several moments, formulating her answer. You know I love you, right? She asked. Yes, I know, he said. What, you don't believe me? She asked. Of course I believe you, he said. It will be better that way, she said. Yes, by the way, I'm leaving a day early on Thursday, she said. What? Tom asked. It will be tomorrow. Why? I need to settle something there before the official meetings begin, she said. I'll pack my things in the morning before I go to work. I left a copy of my itinerary for you on the kitchen table. I apologize for the late notification. What about the reservation? He asked. It was done this morning, she said. So you knew about this since this morning? He asked. Here, she said, this is a problem. Well, I was hoping to see you one more day before you left, he told her. I'm sorry, she said. Listen, I'm shocked. I need to take a shower and take off these clothes, and then I'll go to bed. Yes, of course, he said. You must be tired. Thank you for your understanding. She entered the bathroom and closed the door. He took the opportunity to snatch her cell phone from her purse. He tried entering the code to unlock it but found that the code he had known all these years no longer worked. When did she manage to change this? He asked himself. He put the phone back and rummaged through her purse some more. This was something he had never done before, and he was curious about what he might find. He found a box labeled Plan B 1 Step. Underneath it was written emergency contraceptive. He knew what it was for, and his heart sank even more. He knew she was still taking the pills. She claimed they helped regulate her periods, and perhaps they did, but there was only one reason for this, and it made him feel bad. He took a photo with his phone, then put the box back and went back to bed. When Julie came out of the bathroom, she lay down in bed and snuggled next to Tom. Instead of hugging her like he usually did, he rolled away from her as far as he could, stunned by his disdain. She backed away with tears in her eyes. Does he know? She thought to herself. The next morning, he didn't say anything to her while she was packing. He showered, shaved, dressed for work, then went downstairs for his morning coffee. He grabbed the itinerary she had left on the counter and put it in his briefcase. After walking the children to school, he headed to the door. "You're not even going to kiss me goodbye?" she asked as he approached the door. He stopped, turned, and looked at her without saying a word. "Tom, I really love you, you know," she said. "Uh-huh," he said. "Of course, I know. Call me when you get there." He walked out the door, leaving her standing and wondering how much he really knew. This matter must really be bothering him, she thought. He had never been so cold. Tom scanned and emailed Julia's itinerary to Roger along with any photos he had of her and Alf. He then brought DNA samples and set up an afternoon meeting with Lucy Hawkins, a divorced shark who hated cheating spouses. Many in the police force knew her as the policeman's best friend after the bartender. She hated scammers with a passion, especially those who attacked police officers. Then he finally forced himself to get to work. He thought he had achieved his goal until he received a call from his boss, Captain Smith. "Lieutenant Williams," he called. "Get your fifth place to my office quickly." "I'm coming, boss," he said, grimacing at his fellow detectives. "Close the door, Tom," Smith said when Tom appeared. "Sit down, okay, before you fall." Tom was sitting in the captain's office. Smith closed the blinds. He looked at Tom before speaking. "Okay, Tom, lay it out," said Smith. "What's happening?" "I think my wife is cheating on me," said Tom. "Welcome to the club, buddy," Smith said. "It happens to all of us at one time or another." "You don't understand," said Tom. "What?" asked Smith. "Is your case special?" "I think she cheated on our whole marriage," Tom said. "I have reason to believe that the children are not even mine," Tom said. "Oh hell," Tom Smith said. "This sucks." "I'm sorry to hear it." "I have an appointment with Lucy this afternoon," said Tom. "Fine, maybe you should stop by and talk to Wilkerson too," Smith said. "What, a local psychiatrist?" Tom asked. "It won't hurt." "You're going through hell right now, Tom," Smith said. "I need you at your best, and unfortunately, I don't need you right now. I know your whole world has gone to hell, but you are not the first person this has happened to. If you need extra time to take care of your personal items, that's fine. Just don't lose sight of your business. Pull yourself together and get back to work. Can you hear me?" "I understand, Cap," said Tom. "Thank you." Yes, said Smith. "Get out of here, you slacker," he added with a smile and a wink. Tom thought about what the captain said and went to see Donna Wilkerson after contacting the rest of the crew. "Well, for a change, the mighty Tom Williams is actually knocking on my door," Donna said as he knocked on her door. Donna was an attractive woman, brunette with brown eyes. She was about 5 years younger than him and well-built with firm, C-shaped breasts and shapely legs. She was also married and had 3 children. "Please come in and sit down." He walked into her office and closed the door before sitting down. "This must be serious." "What's going on, Lieutenant?" He told her what he had learned so far. "But you don't have any real evidence yet?" she asked. "I'm in the process of getting it now," he told her. "Have you already talked to a lawyer?" she asked. "I have an appointment with Lucy Hawkins this afternoon," said Tom. Donna nodded her head. "This is serious, right?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "If what I suspect is true, I will never be able to forgive her or turn a blind eye to it. We're done." "Have you already told the children?" she asked. "No," he said. "Not yet. You know they'll be devastated by this. You're the only father they've ever really known," she said. "If you're not careful, they can be traumatized for years to come." "I know," he said. "But I always taught them to tell the truth, no matter how much it might hurt at first. I can't hide it from them. Eventually, they will find out. It's better if it comes from me first." "How do you cope with all this?" she asked. "Not very good," he said. "If what I suspect is true, then the last 20 years have been a lie." "I take it you haven't talked to your wife about this yet?" she asked. "No, first I wanted to put all the facts together," he said. "That's probably reasonable," she said. "Maybe we should talk a little more after you figure out what's really going on. And remember that your children are the most important thing in your life. Their needs must come first." "I never forgot it," he said. "But now it seems they are not even my children." "Perhaps you are the biological father, perhaps not," she said. "But there is no doubt that you are their father. You are the one who raised them and turned them into what they are today. Never forget that, Tom." "I won't forget, Donna," he said. "Okay," she said. "I think we should talk a little more after you get all the facts together. You'll get through this, Tom. No matter how much it hurts now, you will get through this. Just don't let it destroy you or your children. My door is always open, Tom, and just so you know, everything we talk about here remains confidential." "I appreciate it, Donna," he said, standing up. "Thank you. I will be in touch." That afternoon, he found himself in the office of Lucy Hawkins, a legal lawyer. She listened carefully as he told his story. "You say you already have a private detective in New York?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "And are you waiting for the results of your DNA test?" she asked in continuation. "That's right," he said. She nodded her head. "I don't want to jump the shark over this," she said. "Let's see what the evidence says before we do anything drastic. However, I have to say that it really bothers me that she seems to be talking about you in her workplace. Technically, this could be libel, and as such, cause for legal action. I'm also concerned about birth certificates. If she knew you weren't the father when she signed them, she could have been charged with paternity fraud and possibly perjury under state law." "Seriously?" Tom asked. She nodded her head. "Yes," she said. "Different states handle things like this differently, but in this state, if she names you as the father and signs these certificates knowing that you are not the father, she can be fined up to $10,000 and sentenced to 5 years in prison for every offense. And if the real father had known about it at the time, it could have been considered a conspiracy, which, as you know, is a felony in this state." "Damn," said Tom. "Yes, it could be a mess," she said. "Look, let me do this. I'll open a case, but I won't prepare anything until we get some evidence. In the meantime, I'll get my investigators involved and see what we can learn. Keep me informed at all times and don't give Julie the slightest reason to be suspicious. Give her all the rope she needs to hang herself. Don't do anything stupid or unreasonable, and remember that your children are your main concern." "I understand," he said. They finished the meeting, and Tom went home. As soon as he walked inside, Roger called him. "Hey buddy," Roger said. "How are you holding up?" "Okay, I think," said Tom. "Julie must be on her way there already. I just spoke with my lawyer, and we are waiting for evidence before we pull the trigger." "Okay," he said. "It cost me a couple of $100, but I was able to get the camera into her room. It is voice and motion activated and has its own web server for downloading. Let me give you the IP address, and you can check it yourself if you want. You can even record streaming video." "Okay, give me what I need," Tom said. Roger gave him the address and login credentials, and Tom wrote it all down. "Thanks, buddy," he said. "Anytime," Roger said. "I'm on my way to the airport now. Her plane is due to land in about an hour, and I'll look after her. We'll talk to you soon." They finished the conversation, and Tom turned on his computer. Julie Williams sat in the window seat of a plane bound for New York. She reflected on her life while looking out the window. For almost 20 years, she was married to the most wonderful man a girl could ever dream of. He was a respected and decorated police officer, dedicated to his job and his family. He was an amazing father to her 2 children. He doted on the children, taught them to fish, play ball, and even took them to the shooting range when they were older, teaching them how to use firearms. Part of her felt guilty about what she had done all these years, but she couldn't help herself. Alf was her first true love, and he had the biggest manhood she had ever known. Moreover, he knew how to use it. She wanted to marry him and have children with him, but he made it clear to her that he did not want to burden himself with children. She was sad when he left for New York, and even sadder when he said he would date other women. But she decided that if he could do it, then she could too. And then she met Tom Williams, a Marine veteran who wanted to become a police officer. In terms of physique, Tom was very similar to Alf. He could be demanding when necessary, but unlike Alf, he treated her like a queen. They fell in love, and she decided to marry him. But she also wanted Alf's children. She kept in touch with Alf, mostly through email and text messages. Tom respected her enough to never ask about her past, and she used that to her advantage. By now, Alf had built up a reputation at Apex Financials, and it was his recommendation that secured her the job. Her affair with him began at the very first quarterly meeting in New York. She knew she would have to be careful and always took extra steps to keep Tom in the dark. She called him every evening when she was out and made sure she came home spotlessly clean. Since she only wanted Alf's children, she made a birth control schedule. She and Tom discussed children and decided that she would take birth control pills until they were ready. She did take the pills as agreed, but stopped taking them right before the trips without telling her husband. Several times when he initiated intim, she pushed him away, saying she was on her period or wasn't feeling well. The truth was that she didn't want to risk getting pregnant by her husband. Tom was 3 months into the police academy when she became pregnant with Andrew. She knew it was Alf's child, but she told Tom it was his child. He was shocked because he knew she was taking pills, but at the same time, he was excited at the prospect of having a little boy or girl. When Andrew was born, she immediately knew it was an Alf baby. Tom was so engrossed in watching the little boy that he never paid any attention to it. But his mother did. More than once, Tom insisted that his wife would never cheat and dropped the matter. Of course, Alf also knew that this was his child, but the two of them decided that she would call Tom father. The same scenario played out when she became pregnant with Marie. After Marie was born, she told Tom that she had had a very difficult birth and begged him to have a vasectomy. Concerned for his wife's health and safety, he agreed. After her vasectomy, Julie breathed a sigh of relief. She no longer had to worry about ever getting pregnant by her husband. But she continued to take the pills, telling him it helped her menstrual cycle normalize. Her affair with Alf continued, and she saw him every time she flew east. At first, they were reserved, not wanting to cause gossip in the office. She wasn't worried about Tom ever meeting Alf since they were at least 1,000 miles apart, and Alf had never come to their town. That is until the night of that Christmas party. She cornered Alf when she first saw him and told him to be calm around Tom. The last thing she wanted was a clash of the titans between Alf and her husband. "Don't worry," said Alf. "I constantly deceive people. Your little detective won't suspect anything." She was a little surprised when she later saw that the two men were actually talking calmly. However, on the way home, Tom started talking about her relationship with her ex-fiancé. When he asked her if she had any regrets, she deflected the question by saying that she had everything she could ever dream of. And it was true. She had a wonderful husband who was also a good father, and she had a lover who satisfied her intimate needs. She continued to date Alf, but over the years, a few people began to take notice. About 5 years ago, Alice, a new girl who had just joined her team, came face to face with her. Not wanting to cause problems, she lied to Alice. "Listen, Alice," she said. "My husband knows all about this," she said. "We have something like an open marriage. He's fine with it as long as it happens outside the city. Besides, he was injured in the line of duty, and, well, he can barely have intim anymore anyway. Please don't tell anyone anything, okay? He's embarrassed enough about this as it is." "Well, okay," said Alice. "I just don't think it's right, but I won't say anything." "Thank you, Alice, it means a lot to me," she said. "Tom and I are really happy, and he gets along great with children. I don't want to spoil this, and if it ever comes out, he'll be devastated." But over the past couple of days, Tom seemed to become different. He said it was just a case he was working on, but could it just be a ruse? She just didn't know. Lately, she has begun to think about the future. Andrew was close to graduating from high school and made it clear that he wanted to follow in Tom's footsteps. Marie was approaching 17 years old and wasn't sure what she wanted to do with her life. Soon they would leave the house, and then what? She asked herself. She and Alf had discussed the possibility of divorce, but she wanted to wait a little longer, perhaps until Tom retired from the police force so she could potentially receive half of his pension along with half of everything else. Then she could transfer to New York and be with Alf all the time. But she wasn't sure that was what he wanted. She was brought back to reality when the captain announced that the plane was beginning its descent to LaGuardia Airport. She sat down and, noticing the flashing sign above her head, set down her tray and fastened her seatbelt. Tom watched the monitor on his screen. He looked at his watch and figured that she should be in her room any minute. Suddenly, the video started, and he saw his wife enter the room, followed by Alf. He was stunned to see how similar this man was to his children. While he watched, Julia set her bags on the floor, then turned and gave Alf a searingly hot kiss. Tom felt sick. A few minutes later, the two of them were doing a horizontal mambo on the bed. "Oh God, I needed this," she said when they finished. "Me too," said Alf. "Tell me, how are things going with Deputy Friend?" "Please don't talk about Tom like that," Julia said. "He is a very respected police officer," Alf said mockingly. "I see how much you respect him," he continued. "He's so good that he still doesn't understand what you've been doing behind his back all these years. Heck, he's been raising my kids this whole time, and he still has no idea. Maybe I should send him a card for Father's Day to thank him for the brilliant job he did." "Don't you dare," Julia said, slapping his hand. "Are you going to leave him?" he asked. "Not until the children leave the house," she said. "Maybe only after he retires. This way, I can receive a decent portion of his pension. You know, I was thinking about asking to transfer you to my department," he told her. "You would still have your work history, and we would be together forever. What do you think?" "Maybe after the kids leave," she said. "Once they graduate, it won't matter. Right now, they need me there with Tom." "Okay, what time period are we talking about?" he asked. "Well, Marie will soon be 17, she said. "I would say no more than 1.5 years, maybe 2 years maximum. Considering we've been doing this for 20 years, it should be a piece of cake. I really want you to meet your children at least once. I think as soon as you see them, you will fall in love with them." No, we agreed, remember?" he asked. "From the moment you first became pregnant, we said that I would not have contact with them. We even agreed that you would marry them off to Tom's children, remember?" "I remember," she said. "I just think it would be nice if you met them. Maybe one day, after you divorce the policeman," he said. "By the way, we have a table reserved for dinner. Better get ready." "Okay," she said. "I'll go take a shower and change clothes. See you downstairs in, say, half an hour." "See you then," he said, kissing her. "I really love you, Alf," she said, repeating her words to Tom. "And I always did." Tom felt as if he had just been punched in the stomach. "And I love you too, Julie," he said. "See you downstairs, okay?" He got up and left the room. While he watched, Julia took out her cell phone and dialed a number. A few seconds later, his phone rang. He pulled it out and thought about sending it to voicemail. After a few rings, he answered. "Yes," he said. Tom, it's me, Julie," she said. "I know," he said. "I just wanted to let you know that I got to New York okay," she said. "Okay," he said. "How are things going with your case?" she asked. "I think we'll have everything settled by the time you get back," he said. "I'm very, very close to catching my main suspect," he said. "I'm glad," she said. "I could tell how much this bothered you, you have no idea," he said. "I'm going out to dinner, but I'll call you tomorrow night, okay?" she asked. "Okay," he said. "I really love you, Tom, you know that, right?" she asked. "Yes, of course," he said. "I'll tell the children that you called and said hi. We'll talk to you later, bye." He ended the conversation and wondered if she had noticed that he never said he loved her. He looked at the video feed. She stared at her phone for a few seconds after he hung up. He could tell from the expression on her face that she was worried. Okay, he thought. He made sure the video was recorded on his hard drive and saved it so he could burn it onto a DVD later. Turning off the monitor, he headed into the living room. By then, the children had already returned home from school. The next day, he received a call from the DNA lab saying they had the results of his test. He walked over and picked it up. He was not surprised to find that none of the children present were his. Now it's official, he thought. He took the DVD he recorded last night and the DNA test to Lucy's office. The DNA test is good, but I can't use the video as evidence in court, she said. However, I think we have enough data to begin the process. We will file for divorce on charges of adultery and fraud. This is a community property condition, but the court takes adultery into account when it comes time to divide the property. However, I am still not sure that we can do anything about paternity fraud since the evidence cannot be presented in court. What if I could make her admit what she did? Tom asked. Maybe in the presence of witnesses. Let me think about this for a moment, she said. Come see me on Wednesday, I'll think of something by then. Okay, see you on Wednesday, he said before leaving. That night, Julie called as usual right after she had intimated with Alf. She was good at making sure her lover was quiet while she was on the phone. Apparently, after years of deception, they succeeded. Tom made sure to never tell her that he loved her. On Wednesday, he met with Lucy as she had requested. This time, there was another man in her office. Tom knew him, Marvin Morrison, the district attorney. There was another person, a deputy named Sarah Miles. Tom had worked with her several times in the past, and they became good friends. Before the meeting began, they all shook hands. Lieutenant Williams, Marvin said, Lucy brought your case to my attention, and I agree that what your wife did was deliberate fraud. But we need more than the video footage taken in her hotel room. What do you suggest? Tom asked. Perhaps if you could get your wife to admit that she fraudulently signed these forms, we could apprehend her and charge her, Marvin said. She should be back on Saturday morning, said Tom. I'll ask her when she calls in the evening. Okay, said Marvin. I also suggest that you invite a witness. I assume you know Deputy Miles? Yes, we know each other, said Tom. That's even better, said Marvin. Get your wife to admit what she did, preferably on tape, so the sheriff's deputy here can serve her with divorce papers and arrest her at the same time. Okay, said Tom. I'll let you know when to expect her, he told Sarah. I'll make sure the kids leave. I don't want them to see their mother being taken away in handcuffs, Tom confirmed. He returned that evening when she called. Are you still planning to return on Saturday morning? He asked. Of course, she said. Okay, said Tom. Maybe we could have a party or something. That would be so nice, she said. You know that I love you and miss you, right? Yes, of course, Tom said in a neutral tone. Don't you love me? She asked. You didn't tell me you loved me or missed me at all this week. Yes, I loved you, he said. We'll talk to you later, bye. He ended the conversation, wondering if she had caught the past tense he had deliberately used. He looked at the monitor and saw her looking at the phone with a worried expression on her face. At the same time, he smiled while he watched her put the phone down and climb onto the bed next to Alf. Well, he asked. They want to have a party when I return, she said. How unusual, he said. What's bothering you, Tom? She said. He was so cold all week long, he said. He's working on a case that really bothers him, but I'm starting to wonder if he knows about us. He doesn't know, expletive, Alf said. You don't know Tom like I do, she said. I think he knows, and he's planning something. So what if he knows, said Alf. What is he going to do, divorce you? In the end, you will have almost everything, and you will live in a cardboard box and eat cat food. Who knows, maybe you will bite the bullet too, then you will have everything. Now why don't you shut up about him and focus on us instead? Tom turned off the monitor and let the video save to his hard drive. He put on a brave face in front of the children and went out to join them for dinner. On Friday, Lucy called him, and he went to her office. Sarah was already waiting for him. Okay, Tom, here are the divorce papers, Lucy said. we are filing a statement on charges of adultery and fraud. I asked for guardianship and for you to keep the house. I also asked for a 70/30 split of all marital property, given the long-term nature of her affair and her fraudulent activities since the beginning of the marriage. Maybe the judge will look at it differently, but we'll see what happens. I also filed a lawsuit against Alf Henriksen seeking substantial compensation for child support and child support expenses. Deputy Miles will serve the paperwork on Saturday and also arrest her if you can get her to confess to fraud. I forwarded the documents against Alf to New York and asked that they be served on him on Saturday morning. Have questions? No, said Tom. Be at my house by 7:30 if you can, he told Sarah. Her flight is scheduled to arrive at 7:08 in the morning, and the journey home from there won't take that long. You know the address, right? I know, Tom, she said. I will be there. Thank you, he said. He took a deep breath and let it out. I think that's all, he told them. It's time to act. That evening, he packed a couple of bags and took the children to Julie's parents' house. They were confused by what was happening. Won't Mommy come home tomorrow morning? Andrew asked. Yes, said Tom. Then why can't we stay here? Asked Marie. Listen, children, I need to talk to your mom about something, and it would be better if you two weren't here when it happens, Tom said. I'll explain everything to you on Saturday afternoon, I promise. Are you going to get a divorce? Asked Marie. Please, Dad, don't tell us that you guys are breaking up. I'm afraid there's nothing you can do about it, said Tom. Did you cheat on her? Asked Marie. Tom shook his head. No, in all the time that we have been married, I have never even thought about another woman, said Tom. Are you saying that she cheated on you? Andrew asked. Please, children, work with me on this, Tom said. I'll explain everything to you tomorrow afternoon, I promise, and don't tell your mother anything. They got into the car and drove to Julie's parents' house. It was a quiet ride, except for Marie's crying. When they got there, Julie's mother met them at the door. What's going on, Tom? She asked. Why is Marie crying? I'm sorry, Maggie, he said. I need to talk to Julie in the morning when she gets back. I promise I'll tell you all what's going on tomorrow afternoon. You're not going to hurt her, are you? She asked. No, I would never do that, he said. You're divorcing her, aren't you? Asked Maggie. You have another woman. No, said Tom. It's just the opposite. I'll explain this tomorrow. Thanks for picking up the kids. Okay, Tom, she said. You better tell us the whole truth tomorrow. I will do so, believe me, he said before leaving. That evening, he spoke briefly with Julie. He watched her on video as she sat without clothes on the bed with Alf. Will you be here tomorrow morning as planned? He asked. I will do so, she said. How is your business going? Almost finished, he said. I expect that by this time tomorrow, our suspect will be detained. Okay, she said. Then maybe everything will go back to normal. Maybe, he said. I need to go eat. We'll talk to you in the morning. Bye. He ended the conversation and looked at her on the video. He saw tears on her face as she looked at her phone. He smiled. Oh yes, he thought. Tomorrow there will be much more of this. And then it came, Saturday morning. Sarah arrived shortly before 7 a.m. and helped him prepare everything for the final confrontation. Tom had just put out his cigarette when he heard Julie's car drive into the garage. He hoped she wouldn't stumble upon the large pile of garbage bags that held all her clothes. He listened and heard her high heels clicking on the floor as she walked to the back deck. Volume, she asked, opening the back door. He waved his hand at her, inviting her to the back veranda. Julie, he said. I hope you had a good flight. Yes, she said, looking around. What's happening? Who is this? Where are the children? What is that patrol car at the entrance? The children are with your mother now, he said. This is Deputy Sarah Miles, and this is her patrol car out front. Please sit down. We need to talk. I need to take a shower first, she said. No, Julie, I said. Sit down. We need to talk now, he said in a firm tone. Shocked, she slowly sat down in the seat opposite Sarah, positioning her at a 90 degrees angle to Tom's left side. He pulled out a digital audio recorder, pressed a button, and placed it on the table. "I hope you don't mind if we record this little conversation," he said. "I suppose, given the nature of this case, I should read you your rights," Tom added. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to a lawyer. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be provided for you. Do you understand these rights as I read them to you?" he asked. "Of course," she said, shocked. "But I'm not one of your suspects. I don't need a lawyer because I haven't done anything." "What's going on, Tom?" "In fact, you are a suspect," he told her. "In fact, my main suspect." He pulled out 2 sheets of paper and placed them in front of Julie. "Do you recognize these forms?" he asked. "Yes, of course, I will find out," she said. "What is it?" he asked. "These are children's birth certificates," she said. He nodded his head. "For the record, these are certified true copies of the birth certificates of Andrew Jackson Williams, 18, and Mary Constance Williams, 16, Tom said. "For the record, whose name is that on the signature line?" he asked. "This is my signature," she said, "on both of them." "Could you please read the text under the signature?" he asked. "Yes, it says, 'Under penalty of perjury, I certify that the above is true and factual,'" she read. "Who is listed as the father?" Tom asked. "Of course, it's you," she said. "Read the name, please," he said. "Thomas Jefferson Williams," she read. He pulled out another piece of paper and placed it in front of her. "What is this?" she asked. "It's a DNA test done by the Acme lab here in town," he said. "Pay attention to 3 samples. Sample A was taken from an adult male, namely from a certain Tom Williams. Sample B is from Andrew Williams, and Sample C is from Mary Williams. Please see the summary below. It says that the subjects represented by Sample B and Sample C are related to each other, but neither sample is related to the subject represented by Sample A," she said. "In English, this means that I am not the biological father of the 2 children listed on these birth certificates," he said. "So, please tell us who the baby's father really is." "Well, you, of course," she said in a trembling voice. He shook his head. "Please turn your attention to the video on the laptop," he said. She watched wide-eyed as he played the video of their first meeting last week. "How did you get it?" she asked. "I will ask questions," he said. "You and your lover, one Alf Henriksen, have just admitted that he is the real biological father of the children in question, and you both admitted that you were planning a fraud by listing me as the father, although you knew that this was not the case." "Okay, damn it," she said angrily. "I admit it. I wanted his children, not yours. And yes, I signed the birth papers that list you as the father. It is my right to decide who I want to see as the father of my children, but you have no right to commit fraud," he said. "Tell me, what did you tell your work colleagues about your long-term relationship with Mr. Henriksen?" he asked. "What does that have to do with you?" she asked. "Do you know a certain Alice Blackstone?" he asked. "Yes, I know," she said. "Do you remember what you told her about 5 years ago?" he asked, pulling out another sheet of paper. "It's vague," she answered. "I told her that we have an open marriage, but we don't do that, do we?" he asked. "We never agreed to this," she said. "Do you remember what else you told her?" Tom asked. "Something about you being hurt," she said. "According to her, you said in no uncertain terms that I was injured in the line of duty and could no longer have night," he said. "Do you remember this?" "Okay," she sighed. "Yes, I remember that. And according to what my lawyer found out, you told several others the same thing, right?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "So, you admit that you lied about me to justify your actions with Alf, right?" he asked. "Yes," she said quietly. "I see no reason to continue this interview," he said. He looked at Sarah and nodded his head. She stood up and handed Julia a manila envelope. "Julie Williams, you have been notified," she said. Tears streamed down Julia's face. Sarah looked at Tom, who nodded his head again. Please stand, turn around, and put your hands behind your back, Mrs. Williams, Sarah said. Why? Julia asked. You are under arrest on 2 counts of paternity fraud and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit fraud, Sarah said. What? Julia exclaimed. That's right, Julie, Tom said. What you did is against the law in this state. Adultery is also a misdemeanor in this state, but the district attorney tells me he probably couldn't get a conviction in that case. However, I think it would be a good idea to hire yourself a lawyer before speaking, he said. He looked at Sarah. Take her away from here. Sarah began to lead her away. Julia turned and looked at Tom, tears streaming down her cheeks. Tom, please, I love you, she cried. Please don't do this. I'm glad to hear that from you, said Tom. I shudder to think what you would do to me if you didn't like me. He watched as Sarah led a crying Julia to the patrol car at the entrance. Sarah put her in the back seat and drove away. Tom was relieved that it was all over, but he felt an emptiness inside that surprised him. He loved her for over 20 years. How could she betray him like that? Now it's time for the hardest part. He will have to come face to face with Julie's children and parents and tell them what happened. How will he explain to 2 children that he had to put their mother in prison, even though he was the biological father? He grabbed his laptop and the USB drive with the edited video and drove to Maggie's house, wondering what he would tell them. When he got there, he knocked on the door. Maggie opened it and invited him in. I think it's time to explain everything, he told her. Where are the children? They're in the backyard, she said. Let me go get them. You might as well call Cliff, Tom said. He should hear it too. Cliff was Julie's father, and Tom always looked up to him. A few minutes later, they were all in the living room. What's going on, son? Cliff asked. Where is Julie? I suspect she's already in the county jail by now, Tom said. To jail? Cliff asked. For what? Everyone else was shocked too. It's a long story, said Tom. Let me explain. He looked at the children before continuing, hoping they wouldn't hate him after today, but deep down, he knew he had done the right thing. A long time ago, your mother decided that she didn't want my children, he began, causing everyone to gasp. But we are your children, Mary said in shock. I raised you. But I'm not your biological father, Tom said. There was a guy she was engaged to more than 20 years ago before she met me. She wanted to marry him, but he did not want to take responsibility for children. Wait a minute, I remember this guy, Maggie said. A large guy, blonde with long hair. I think he's Norwegian. I have a photo of him around here somewhere. She took out a photo album and found a photo, then showed it to Cliff. His eyes widened when he saw the similarities between Alf and the children. Yes, his name is Alf Henriksen, said Tom. Be that as it may, Julie decided that she would have children with him, although he did not want them. So she's in jail for having a night with another man? Andrew asked. No, she's in jail for something called paternity fraud, Tom said. When you guys were born, she filled out the birth certificate and signed it saying I'm your father, even though she knew I wasn't from the start. Even worse, she and this Al character conspired to force me to raise the children he gave her as my own. What she did is illegal and could be punished by up to $10,000 and 5 years in prison, Tom added for clarity. That's not all, more, Cliff asked. Yes, said Tom. After Marie was born, she asked me to have a vasectomy, although she knew that the children were not mine. Thanks to her, I can no longer have children, and she had an affair with this guy the entire time we were married. Every time she flew east, she was with him. Just last week, she discussed the possibility of divorcing me and moving in with him. I have it all on video if you want to watch it. Oh my God, Maggie said. As you can imagine, I'm divorcing her instead, Tom said. What about us? Asked Marie. What will happen to us? Are we orphans now? No, honey, said Tom. I went to court asking for custody of both of you. Perhaps I'm not your biological father, but I raised you, and I can't imagine not having you in my life. I fell in love with you the moment I saw you. Marie ran up to him and hugged him. Oh, Daddy, she exclaimed. I love you too. Tom looked up and saw Andrew slowly approaching them, struggling to hold back his tears. Tom extended one hand towards him, holding Marie. It's okay to cry, son, he said. I often did this myself. Am I still your son? Andrew asked, as tears streamed down his face. Tom nodded his head. Of course, said Tom. You will always be my son. Andrew joined his father and sister, and the three of them cried, hugging each other. I love you, Dad, Andrew said. I love you too, son, Tom said, and hot tears streamed down his face. Everything will be fine, guys. We will get through this together. So what happens to Julie now? Cliff asked, after Tom and the children came to their senses. Well, she was taken into the county jail, Tom said. I think they might even call you soon. The DA is going to indict her, and it's my understanding that he's working on extraditing Henriksen back to face conspiracy charges. He plans to prove that Julie is a potential flight risk and could flee to New York if she is released on bail. We'll find out how it goes, probably on Monday when she has her first hearing. What if they let her out on bail? Asked Maggie. I'd be surprised if they did, but she might ask to stay with you, Tom said. I have already collected all her things, and now they are in the garage. Just at that moment, the home phone rang. Maggie picked up the phone and found herself talking to a hysterical Julia. She finally calmed Julie down enough to listen. Julie, Tom is here, and he told us what you did, Maggie said. I must say that I am very ashamed of you. If you didn't want Tom's children, you shouldn't have married him. We heard Julie say something on the other end of the line. Damn it, Julie, you broke the law, Maggie said firmly. We raised you better than this. If they let you out, you can stay here, but don't expect us to condone what you did. And no, we think the kids should stay with Tom. We heard something on the other end of the line, and Maggie called out to the children. Guys, do you want to talk to your mother? Asked Maggie. Andrew and Marie looked at each other for a few moments before answering. Hell no, they shouted at the same time. Tom and Cliff laughed when they heard this. Maggie turned back to the phone. I'm sorry, Julie, but they're not interested in talking to you right now, she said. Maybe they will do so after they calm down a little. Yes, we'll see if we can find a lawyer for you. It's time for us to go, Julie. It was nice chatting with you. We heard Julie crying even after Maggie hung up. Well, that's all, Cliff said. This girl still has a lot of growing up to do. Look, why don't you kids stay here one more night so your dad can do the housework, okay? Okay, said Andrew. Marie agreed. Maggie looked at Tom, who was still a little shocked by what had happened. Everything will be fine, Tom, she said. We will be here for you and the children. Why don't you go home and clean yourself up? You can come get them tomorrow. Thank you, Tom said, hugging her. Cliff shook his hand, and Tom hugged the kids again. See you guys tomorrow, he told them. I love you both and am very proud of you. We love you too, Dad, Marie said. Julie was brought in for arraignment the following Monday. After hearing arguments from District Attorney Marvin Morrison, the judge ordered her held without bail, fearing she might flee the area and head to New York to be with her lover. 3 months later, a jury found her guilty of 2 counts of paternity fraud and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit fraud. The judge sentenced her to a total of 10 years in prison and made her eligible for parole in 6. Her company fired her after the verdict. Alf was extradited, tried, found guilty, and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 3 years. The company fired him too. The civil case against him took a little longer, but the jury awarded Tom a significant award, which he immediately donated to the Children's College Fund. The defamation suit was dismissed after a judge ruled that Tom suffered no actual damages. Tom's divorce was granted based on Lucy's application. Julie received 30% of their joint bank accounts, which Tom had set aside for her so she could access it upon her release from prison. He never visited her in prison, but the children did. Once after that, they never returned. Andrew told Tom that Marie was so upset and angry with their mother that she almost had to be restrained. Andrew graduated from high school and followed in his father's footsteps. He joined the Marine Corps and became a military policeman. Tom was so proud of his son that he took Marie to watch him graduate as an honorary recruit in his platoon. Tom continued his police service and was finally promoted to captain after Captain J. Smith retired. His personal life had virtually disappeared, and he had no desire to date. This did not stop Marie from playing the role of matchmaker. One day she came home with a note and gave it to him. "My English teacher, Miss Harris, wants to see you tomorrow after school," she said. "I know you're stuck at your desk right now, so there's no reason why you can't be there. You're not trying to play matchmaker again, are you?" Tom asked. "Who am I?" Marie asked, raising her eyebrows. The next day, he went to see Miss Harris. When he reached her room, she stood up and extended her hand to him, which he accepted. However, the moment their hands touched, he felt overwhelmed. "Ah, nice to meet you, Miss Harris," he said, stumbling over his words. He didn't want to let go of her hand. He looked her over, hoping it wasn't too noticeable. He liked what he saw, a rather short, pretty brunette with brown eyes. She was well built with beautiful breasts and a charming smile. "Oh, please call me Brenda, Captain Williams," she said. "And you can call me Mom," he told her. "Marie said that you wanted to see me." "Did she say that?" Brenda asked. Did I say that?" "I don't remember." "Well, it's always nice to meet the parents of my students." "I understand you're divorced." "Yes, that's true," he said. "And you are raising a teenage daughter alone?" "I'm impressed," she said. "This must not be easy." "Well, I'm armed and I have handcuffs," he told her with a smile. She laughed. He noticed she wasn't wearing any rings, but he could see the dents on her finger. "I see you are not married," he said. "That's true," she said. "I'm divorced too." "It looks like my daughter is playing matchmaker again," he said. "I'll have to talk to her about this." She laughed. "My daughter did the same thing before she left for college," she said. "Well, I'm sorry to take up your time," he said. "I'll leave you alone with your work." "It's okay," she said. "I was done here anyway, and I was just going to grab a quick bite to eat and then head back to the lonely old house. If you're not too busy, maybe we could have dinner together? Maybe we'll have a glass of wine later?" "Why not?" Tom asked. "Just one thing, if you don't mind me asking." "What is this?" he asked. "You don't happen to have an ex-boyfriend from college or anything, do you?" he asked. She laughed. "Oh, holy heavens, no," she said. "Okay," he said, extending his hand. "What do you like?" he asked, leading her out of the classroom. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. What do you think of our story today? To me, today's situation was as hurtful to my husband as possible, as he raised children who were not his own under the guise of his own for 18 years. What is your opinion and impression of this story? Write in the comments. Until new videos.